Welcome, dear listener, to another journey through the quieter corridors of history. Tonight, we invite you to settle comfortably into your present surroundings, perhaps wrapped in soft blankets, perhaps with a warm drink nearby, as we travel together to a time when such simple comforts were unimaginable. Luxuries. Our destination this evening is medieval Europe, a world where the church's influence stretched into the most intimate corners of daily life, where survival itself was a daily battle, and where the gap between the powerful and the powerless carved deep trenches through society. We'll explore four distinct aspects of this fascinating yet harsh world: the crushing realities of peasant life, the mysterious story of history's most controversial pope, an ancient Greek invention that defied all logic, and the complex world hidden behind castle walls. Take a deep breath and let your mind drift backward through the centuries. The modern world with its conveniences and freedoms fades away, replaced by the rhythms of a simpler, yet infinitely more demanding existence. Tonight, we begin with the lives of those who formed the vast majority of medieval society, the peasants whose daily struggles remind us just how precious our modern comforts truly are. Imagine yourself waking not to the gentle buzz of an alarm clock, but to the deep, resonant tolling of church bells echoing across frost-covered fields. It is still dark, perhaps 4 in the morning by hour. Modern reckoning, and already the day's demands press upon you with relentless certainty. You lie on a simple straw mattress, sharing the cramped space of your one-room dwelling with your spouse, your children, and quite possibly your aging parents. The air is thick with the scent of unwashed bodies, smoke from the dying fire, and the earthy smell of the animals that share your shelter during the harsh winter months. Your home, if we can call it that, consists of walls made from wattle and daub, woven branches plastered with a mixture of mud, straw, and animal dung. The thatched roof above sags with age and moisture, occasionally dropping bits of straw onto your rough woolen blanket. There are no windows as we know them, only small openings that can be covered with wooden shutters or oiled cloth. During winter, you must choose between light and warmth, for any opening lets in the bitter cold that seems to seep into your very bones. As you rise from your bed, your body protests with aches and pains that have become as familiar as breathing. Your back aches constantly from years of bending over crops. Your hands are permanently gnarled from gripping farm tools, and your feet are cracked and hardened from walking barefoot or in crude leather shoes across rough ground. You are perhaps 30 years old, but your body feels ancient, worn down by decades of unrelenting physical labor and poor nutrition. The church's bells continue their summons, and you know that this sound governs not just your waking hours, but every aspect of your existence. The church has divided your year into a complex calendar of restrictions and obligations that touch even the most private moments of your life. For nearly half the year, during Lent, Advent on Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, feast days, and during your wife's monthly cycles and pregnancy, intimate relations between you and your spouse are forbidden. The church teaches that such physical intimacy is acceptable only for procreation, and even then, only during specifically sanctioned times. This religious control extends far beyond your bedroom. You owe the church a tithe, 1/10 of everything you produce. When your meager harvest barely feeds your family through the winter, giving up that portion feels like surrendering your children's lives to ecclesiastical authority. Yet to refuse means excommunication, social ostracism, and the terrifying prospect of dying without last rites, condemned to eternal damnation. But religious obligations form only one thread in the tapestry of your daily struggles. As you step outside into the pre-dawn darkness, the cold air hits your lungs with sharp intensity. Your breath forms clouds of vapor that dissipate quickly in the still air. The village around you stirs slowly to life, other families, beginning their daily routines, the soft lowing of cattle, the creak of wooden carts, and always, that persistent hollow feeling in your stomach that never quite goes away. Hunger is your constant companion, a gnawing presence that shapes every decision, every thought, every hope. Your diet consists primarily of dark, coarse bread made from whatever grains you can afford, often barley, oats, or rye mixed with sawdust or ground acorns when times are particularly hard. This bread is dense and difficult to digest, sometimes moldy, occasionally contaminated with ergot fungus that causes hallucination and painful burning sensations in your limbs. Your other meals, when you can manage them, consist of thin pottage, a watery porridge made from whatever vegetables or grains are available. Cabbage, onions, turnips, and parsnips form the foundation of this meager fare, boiled in water until soft and often seasoned with nothing more than salt, if you're fortunate enough to have it. Meat is a luxury reserved for special occasions, perhaps a chicken at Christmas or pork when a pig is slaughtered in autumn. Even then, most of the meat must be preserved for the long winter months, leaving you with scraps and gristle while the best portions are salted, smoked, or dried for later use. The milk from your cow, if you're prosperous enough to own one, is precious and cannot be wasted on daily consumption. Instead, it must be turned into cheese or butter, products that can be stored longer and provide essential fats that keep your body functioning through the hardest months. Your children often go without fresh milk, their growth stunted by malnutrition, their bodies small and thin, their faces marked by the peculiar pallor of chronic hunger. As dawn finally breaks across the fields, you begin the day's labor with tools that would seem primitive and inefficient to modern eyes. Your plow is made of wood, reinforced with iron only if your lord is generous and you are fortunate. The blade cuts shallow furrows in soil that must be worked again and again to achieve anything resembling proper cultivation. You guide this plow behind an ox or horse if your village is prosperous, or pull it yourself if animal labor is beyond your means. The physical demands of this work are overwhelming. You bend and straighten, lift and carry, push and pull from sunrise to sunset. Your muscles burn with constant exertion, your joints ache from repetitive motion, and your skin is weathered to leather by sun, wind, and rain. During planting season, you scatter seeds by hand, walking mile after mile across uneven ground. During harvest, you swing a scythe for hours, the rhythm of the cut becoming a meditation born of exhaustion. But perhaps the most crushing aspect of your daily existence is the complete absence of choice. You are bound to your lord's land by law and custom, forbidden to leave without permission that is rarely granted. You work his fields several days each week without compensation. This is your labor service, one of the many obligations that define your status as a villain. You plant what he commands, harvest when he decides, and hand over a portion of your crop as rent for the small plot of land that barely sustains your family. When your lord decides to go to war, you may be called to serve as a foot soldier, leaving your family to manage the farm alone. When he decides to build or repair his manor house, you provide the labor. When he travels, you may be required to cart his belongings across muddy roads. Your time is never entirely your own. Your labor never fully benefits your family, and your future is always subject to the whims of those who hold power over you. The legal system offers you no protection. You cannot testify against a free man in court, cannot own property in any meaningful sense, and cannot seek redress for wrongs committed against you by your social superiors. If your lord's soldiers steal your chickens, rape your daughter, or burn your crops, you Have no recourse except to endure and survive as best you can. Disease stalks your village with persistent menace. The Black Death may be the most famous of medieval plagues, but dozens of other ailments threaten your family's survival. Dysentery turns your bowels to liquid fire. Typhus brings burning fever and delirium. Tuberculosis fills your lungs with fluid, drowning you slowly over months or years. Simple infections from cuts or scratches can kill you, as can the complications of childbirth, broken bones, or infected teeth. Your children face the greatest peril. Of every 4 bobbies born in your village, 1 will die before reaching their first birthday. Another will likely die before age 5. Those who survive face the same grinding poverty, the same limited horizons, the same cycle of backbreaking labor that defines your own existence. You watch them grow thin during lean winters, see their faces grow hollow with hunger, notice how they stop growing when food becomes scarce. Yet even in this harsh existence, small moments of warmth pierce through the overwhelming difficulties. The birth of a healthy child brings joy that seems to light the entire village. Harvest festivals, despite their religious obligations, provide rare opportunities for music, dancing, and communal celebration. Stories told around winter fires, tales of brave knights, magical creatures, and distant lands offer brief escapes from daily realities. The changing seasons provide their own rhythm and beauty, even through the lens of hardship. Spring brings hope as green shoots push through dark soil, promising another year of survival. Summer offers longer days and warmer nights, when the living becomes slightly easier and food more plentiful. Autumn brings the crucial harvest, when your family's winter survival is determined by weather, luck, and backbreaking effort. But winter is when the true weight of medieval peasant life presses down with crushing force. Food stores dwindle with terrifying speed. The cold seeps through every crack in your shelter, making sleep fitful and uncomfortable. Your animals grow thin and weak, their milk production drops, and you must make terrible decisions about which creatures to slaughter for food and which to keep alive for breeding and labor. During the worst winters, families in your village simply disappear. They die quietly in their homes, too weak from hunger and cold to venture outside, too proud to beg for help that isn't available anyway. Children who were laughing and playing in autumn become listless and silent by February, their eyes growing large in faces that seem to shrink week by week. You learn to recognize the signs of approaching death in yourself and others. The peculiar pallor, the way clothing hangs loose on shrinking frames, the gradual withdrawal from daily activities as energy reserves dwindle to nothing. You learn to calculate constantly how much food remains, how many weeks, until spring planting, whether your family can survive another month of winter's grip. Through all of this, the church's demands continue without pause or mercy. Tithes must be paid even when payment means hunger. Religious services must be attended even when attendance means leaving urgent farm work undone. The church's sexual prohibitions must be observed even when the comfort of physical intimacy might provide the only warmth available in your cold, difficult world. Your entire existence is shaped by forces beyond your control. The weather, the church, your Lord's whims, the constant threat of disease, and the grinding demands of simple survival. You cannot travel to see what lies beyond the next village, cannot choose your occupation, cannot educate your children beyond the most basic skills needed for farm work. And yet somehow you endure. Your ancestors endured, and their ancestors before them, stretching back through generations of similar struggles. You find ways to extract tiny moments of happiness from circumstances that would seem unbearable to modern sensibilities. You develop a deep knowledge of seasons, weather patterns, plant growth, an animal behavior that connects you to the natural world in ways that urban dwellers can barely imagine. Your hands, rough and scarred from constant labor, know exactly how soil should feel between your fingers, can judge the quality of grain by its weight and texture, can sense changes in weather hours before they arrive. Your body, though worn and aged beyond its years, is strong in ways that matter for survival, capable of working from dawn to dusk, adapted to poor nutrition and harsh conditions, resilient in the face of hardships that would quickly overwhelm someone from our comfortable modern world. This is the daily reality of medieval peasant life, an existence balanced on the knife's edge between survival and catastrophe, where every day brings new challenges and every season carries the potential for either abundance or disaster. It is a life that reminds us, as we drift towards sleep in our warm, secure homes, just how precious and miraculous our modern comforts truly are. As we prepare to continue our journey through medieval history, let these images of peasant hardship settle into your mind like gentle reminders of human resilience and the long, difficult path that brought us to our present comfort and security. As we drift away from the muddy fields and cramped hovels of medieval peasant life, our journey through history now carries us to the marble corridors and incense-filled chambers of ecclesiastical power. Here, in the highest reaches of medieval society, we encounter one of history's most intriguing and controversial figures, a story that challenges everything we think we know about power, gender, and religious authority in the Middle Ages. The tale begins in the early 9th century, during a time when Europe was slowly emerging from the chaos that followed the collapse of Charlemagne's empire. It was an era of political uncertainty, religious upheaval, and social transformation, a time when ambitious individuals could rise to extraordinary heights through intelligence, determination, and carefully maintained deceptions. Imagine yourself in a world where education was the exclusive privilege of the church, where knowledge of Latin could open doors to power that remained forever closed to the illiterate masses. In this world, young woman, whose name history records variously as Joan, Johanna, or Agnes, made a decision that would either elevate her to the pinnacle of earthly authority or condemn her to eternal infamy. The earliest accounts of her story, written by medieval chroniclers centuries after the alleged events, paint a picture of exceptional intelligence constrained by the rigid limitations of her time. Born somewhere in the German lands, perhaps in Mainz, perhaps in England, the sources disagree, she displayed from childhood an insatiable hunger for learning that could not be satisfied within the narrow confines available to women of her era. In medieval Europe, formal education for women barely existed. Noble ladies might learn to read religious texts, manage household accounts, or embroider elaborate tapestries, but the deep study of theology, philosophy, and rhetoric remained firmly in masculine hands. Universities would not admit women for centuries to come, and even convents offered limited intellectual opportunities compared to the scholarly debates that flourished in monasteries and cathedral schools. Yet this young woman, according to the chroniclers, possessed a mind that refused to accept such restrictions. The story tells us that she disguised herself as a man, perhaps initially to escape an unwanted marriage, perhaps simply to pursue the education she craved so desperately. She bound her chest, cropped her hair, adopted masculine clothing and mannerisms, and set out into a world that would have destroyed her had her deception been discovered. Picture her in those early days of her masquerade, walking the dusty roads between monasteries and schools, her heart pounding with each encounter that might expose her secret. Every conversation required careful modulation of her voice. Every gesture had to be consciously masculine. Every moment of privacy was a precious opportunity to let down her guard before resuming the exhausting performance of being someone she was not. But her intelligence, it seems, was genuinely extraordinary, traveling under the name John Anglicus. John the Englishman, she gained admission to the cathedral school in Rome, then the intellectual center of the Christian world. Here, among the brightest theological minds of her generation, she not only kept pace but excelled, demonstrating such mastery of scripture, logic, and rhetoric that her reputation began to spread throughout ecclesiastical circles. The medieval church was, in many ways, a meritocracy. While noble birth certainly helped, exceptional talent could elevate even humble origins to positions of real authority. Brilliant theologians became bishops, skilled administrators rose to become cardinals, and those who combined intellectual gifts with political acumen could aspire to the very highest offices of Christendom. John Anglicus, as she was known, possessed all these qualities in abundance. Her biblical scholarship was profound, her theological arguments were elegant and persuasive, and her understanding of church law was encyclopedic. More importantly, she had developed the diplomatic skills necessary to navigate the treacherous waters of ecclesiastical politics, forming alliances with powerful churchmen while avoiding the factional disputes that destroyed so many promising careers. Years passed, and her reputation continued to grow. She served in various administrative positions within the papal bureaucracy, demonstrating the kind of practical competence that made her indispensable to those who held power. She wrote learned treatises on theological questions, participated in scholarly debates, and gradually accumulated the connections and credibility that might, in time, lead to elevation within the church hierarchy. The papal office itself, during this period, was far from the stable institution we might imagine today. Popes died with disturbing frequency, sometimes from natural causes, sometimes from less natural ones. Political pressures from various European kingdoms, internal church politics, and the constant threat of invasion by Saracens or Vikings made the papal throne a precarious seat indeed. When Pope Leo IV died in 855 or 853, depending on which chronology you follow, the College of Cardinals found itself facing a succession crisis typical of the era. Various factions supported different candidates, each backed by different political interests, each representing different theological perspectives or administrative approaches. In such circumstances, compromise candidates sometimes emerged, individuals who could bridge factional divides or whose qualifications were so obvious that opposition seemed futile. According to the chroniclers, this is precisely what happened with John Anglicus. Her reputation for learning and administrative competence, combined with her apparent neutrality in ongoing disputes, made her an attractive candidate for cardinals seeking to avoid more controversial choices. The election process itself, conducted in secrecy within the Sistine Chapel, remains shrouded in mystery, but the result was clear. John Anglicus became pope, taking the name John VIII. Imagine the moment of her elevation, standing before the assembled cardinals, receiving their homage, knowing that she had achieved the impossible dream of ultimate authority within medieval Christendom. The papal throne represented not just religious leadership, but genuine temporal power, influence over kings and emperors, control over vast territories and enormous wealth. She had, through intelligence and deception, reached heights that were theoretically impossible for someone of her birth. But consider also the terrible weight of that achievement. Every public appearance required perfect performance of her masculine role. Every private moment carried the risk of discovery. The papal office demanded not just intellectual and administrative skills, but physical stamina, Long ceremonies, arduous. Journeys, the constant demands of diplomatic and ceremonial functions. How did she manage the most? Basic biological functions while maintaining her disguise. How did she handle illness, fatigue, or the simple human need for authentic companionship? The reign of Pope John VIII, as recorded by medieval historians, lasted for over 2 years, a period of relative stability and effective governance. Her theological writings from this period show no decline in intellectual rigor, and administrative records suggest competent management of church affairs. She issued papal bulls, presided over religious ceremonies, and conducted diplomatic correspondence with European rulers, all while maintaining the deception that had brought her to power. Yet the psychological strain must have been overwhelming. Medieval papal life was intensely public. Surrounded by servants, advisors, petitioners, and visitors from across Christian Europe, privacy was a luxury that papal office rarely afforded, and the constant scrutiny meant that every gesture, every word, every moment of behavior was subject to observation and interpretation. The end of her story, as recorded by various medieval chroniclers, comes suddenly and dramatically. The most common version tells us that her deception was discovered during a papal procession through Rome when she went into labor and gave birth to a child in full view of the assembled crowd. The shock of this revelation, that the Pope was not only a woman, but a woman who had been sexually active, supposedly sent the crowd into a murderous rage. Other versions of the story offer different details about her downfall. Some suggest that she was deliberately exposed by political enemies who had discovered her secret and were waiting for the most damaging moment to reveal it. Others claim that her deception was uncovered during a routine medical examination, or that her own confession preceded any external discovery. But all versions agree on the aftermath: swift and terrible retribution. The woman who had reached the highest office in Christendom was reportedly killed by the same crowd that had once acclaimed her as Pope. Some accounts describe stoning. Others suggest that she was dragged behind horses through the streets of Rome. Still others claim that she was burned alive as a heretic and deceiver. The institutional response was equally dramatic. Church officials moved quickly to erase all traces of her reign from official records. Papal chronologies were altered, documents were destroyed or hidden, and a systematic campaign was launched to discredit the very idea that such events could have occurred. The Church instituted new procedures for papal elections, including, according to some accounts, physical examinations designed to prevent any future deceptions of this nature. Yet despite these efforts at erasure, the story persisted. Medieval chroniclers continued to record versions of the tale, often with significant variations in detail but consistent in their core claims. The story appeared in works by respected historians like Martin of Opava, Bartolomeo Platina, and others, suggesting that whatever kernel of truth lay at its heart was too widely known to be completely suppressed. The historical evidence for Pope Joan's existence remains tantalizing but inconclusive. No contemporary documents explicitly confirm her reign, but this absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence, particularly given the Church's documented efforts to erase all traces of her from official records, the gaps in papal chronologies for the relevant period, the unusual procedures introduced for later papal elections, and the persistent nature of the legend itself all suggest that something extraordinary occurred during those crucial years in the 9th century. Modern historians remain divided on the question of Pope Joan's historical reality. Some dismiss the entire story as medieval legend, pointing to the lack of contemporary documentation and the obviously legendary elements that accumulated around the tale over time. Others argue that the consistent core of the story, combined with the institutional changes it appears to have prompted, suggests at least some historical foundation. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the Pope Joan story is not whether it actually happened, but what it reveals about medieval attitudes toward gender, power, and religious authority. The fact that such a story could be told, retold, and preserved suggests a medieval awareness that exceptional women might indeed be capable of achieving the highest levels of intellectual and administrative competence, if only social conventions did not prevent them from doing so. The tale also illuminates the precarious nature of identity in medieval society, where social position was often more fluid than we might assume. The story of Pope Joan is fundamentally a story about the power of performance, how sustained acting and exceptional ability could, under the right circumstances, overcome even the most fundamental social barriers. Consider what her life must have been like during those years of deception and power. Every morning brought the necessity of resuming her masculine performance, every evening the exhausting relief of temporary privacy. She wielded enormous influence over medieval Christendom while being unable to confide her true identity to anyone. She made decisions that affected millions of people while living in complete isolation from authentic human connection. The loneliness of her position seems almost unbearable when contemplated from our modern perspective. She achieved everything that ambition could desire: wealth, power, respect, intellectual fulfillment, yet could never truly enjoy these achievements because they were built upon a foundation of constant deception. Every triumph was shadowed by the knowledge that discovery would mean not just loss of position but likely death. And what of the child whose birth supposedly revealed her secret? The medieval accounts tell us nothing of how she concealed a pregnancy while serving as pope, nothing of the identity of the father, nothing of what became of the infant after her discovery and death. These silences in the historical record remind us of how many women's stories remain untold, how many experiences of medieval life disappeared without trace into the vast darkness of unrecorded history. The story of Pope Joan, whether historical fact or persistent legend, offers us a window into a medieval world where the boundaries between possible and impossible were more fluid than we might expect. It reminds us that even in societies with rigid social hierarchies, exceptional individuals sometimes found ways to transcend the limitation imposed by their circumstances. As we allow this remarkable tale to settle into our minds, we can appreciate both the extraordinary courage such deception would have required and the terrible price that discovery would have demanded. In a world where identity was largely determined by birth, where women's intellectual capabilities were systematically underestimated, and where religious authority was assumed to be exclusively masculine, the story of Pope Joan suggests that medieval reality might have been far more complex and surprising than we often assume. Whether she existed as a historical figure or lives only in the realm of medieval legend, Pope Joan represents something profound about human ambition, the power of exceptional intelligence, and the tragic consequences that can result when societies create barriers that prevent their most talented members from contributing their gifts openly and honestly. As our imaginations drift away from the marble corridors of papal power, we carry with us this image of extraordinary achievement shadowed by unavoidable tragedy, of intellectual triumph married to personal isolation, and of a story that continues to challenge our assumptions about medieval society nearly 1,000 years after the events it purports to describe. As we drift away from the shadowed corridors of medieval ecclesiastical power, our journey through time carries us much further back, to the sun-drenched waters of the Aegean Sea and one of history's most perplexing mysteries. Here, in the realm of ancient Greece, we encounter an artifact so extraordinary, so impossibly advanced for its time, that it challenges everything we thought we knew about the technological capabilities of the ancient world. The year is 1901, and the Mediterranean sparkles under an autumn sun as a small boat cuts through the gentle swells off the Greek island of Antikythera. Aboard are sponge divers, hardy men whose dangerous profession takes them to the deepest parts of the sea in search of the valuable sponges that grow on underwater cliffs and rocky outcroppings. These divers, using primitive equipment and relying on extraordinary lung capacity and courage, regularly descend to depths that would challenge modern scuba equipment. On this particular day, the divers are seeking shelter from rough weather when they notice something unusual beneath the clear blue water, the dark outline of what appears to be a shipwreck lying on the seafloor some 50 meters below the surface. Curious and always alert to the possibility of valuable cargo, they decide to investigate what would prove to be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in human history. Captain Dimitrios Kondos, an experienced sponge diver, makes the first descent to examine the wreck more closely. Imagine his wonder as he swims through the crystal-clear water, the sunlight filtering down from above in shifting patterns of gold and blue, and discovers not just a shipwreck, but a treasure trove of ancient artifacts scattered across the sandy bottom. Bronze statues peer up at him through the water. With sightless eyes, marble sculptures lie half buried in sediment, and everywhere he looks he sees evidence of a cargo that was once destined for wealthy collectors in ancient Rome. The ship itself, as later archaeological investigation would reveal, was a substantial vessel, perhaps 60 meters in length, that had been carrying luxury goods from Greek workshops to Roman markets. Sometime in the 1st century BCE, its cargo included bronze and marble statues, jewelry, coins, wine, amphorae, and various luxury items that spoke of sophisticated trade networks connecting the Greek islands with the broader Roman world. But among all these treasures, one object would prove more mysterious and significant than all the others combined. When the divers brought their finds to the surface, sorting through the corroded bronze and examining each artifact with the careful attention of experienced treasure hunters, they discovered what appeared to be a lump of corroded bronze, encrusted with marine growth and seemingly unremarkable among the more obviously valuable statues and jewelry. This unprepossessing object might have been discarded or ignored entirely, but fortunately it found its way to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where it was cataloged and stored along with the other finds from the Antikythera wreck. For months it sat in storage, just another piece of corroded metal from an ancient shipwreck, attracting no special attention from archaeologists who were far more excited by the beautiful statues and clear historical significance of the other artifacts. Then, as the bronze began to dry and the marine incrustations started to flake away, something extraordinary became visible. Gear wheels, dozens of them, cut with incredible precision from bronze sheets and assembled into a mechanism of stunning complexity. The archaeologists who first observed these gears must have experienced something approaching disbelief. Such sophisticated mechanical engineering was not supposed to exist in the ancient world, at least not according to conventional understanding of ancient technological capabilities. Initial reactions ranged from puzzlement to outright denial. Some scholars suggested that the mechanism must be a modern intrusion, perhaps a clock or other mechanical device that had somehow become mixed in with the ancient artifacts through some error in cataloging or storage. The idea that ancient Greeks could have created such sophisticated mechanical technology simply did not fit with established historical understanding of ancient capabilities. But as careful examination continued, this explanation became increasingly untenable. The mechanism was clearly ancient, its bronze corroded in ways consistent with 2,000 years of submersion in seawater. More importantly, detailed study began to reveal not just the presence of gears, but inscriptions in ancient Greek that provided clues to the device's purpose and origin. Picture yourself as one of those early researchers, bent over this mysterious object with magnifying glasses and primitive lighting, trying to make sense of what you're seeing. The bronze is dark with age and corrosion, but as you carefully clean each surface, intricate details emerge. Gear teeth cut with mathematical precision, bronze plates covered with tiny inscriptions in ancient Greek letters, pointers and dials that suggest some kind of calculating or measuring function. The breakthrough in understanding came in the 1970s, when X-ray technology was applied to the mechanism for the first time. These X-rays, penetrating through layers of corrosion and mineral deposits, revealed the full extent of the device's internal complexity. What emerged from these images was nothing short of astounding. A mechanical computer of extraordinary sophistication, consisting of at least 37 precision-cut bronze gears arranged in complex trains that could perform advanced astronomical calculations. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, was revealed to be an ancient Greek analog computer designed to predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable accuracy. Its gear trains could calculate lunar and solar eclipses, predict the dates of Olympic Games, and track the complex cycles of celestial bodies as they appeared to ancient Greek astronomers. Consider the mathematical and engineering knowledge required to create such a device. The gear ratios had to be calculated with extraordinary precision to accurately model the irregular motions of celestial bodies. The bronze gears themselves had to be cut and shaped to tolerances that would challenge even modern machinists. The assembly required not just understanding of astronomy and mathematics, but sophisticated knowledge of materials, mechanics, and precision manufacturing techniques. The inscriptions on the mechanism, painstakingly deciphered over decades of careful study, reveal a device that was essentially a handbook of astronomical knowledge, condensed into mechanical form. The text includes instructions for operating the mechanism, descriptions of astronomical phenomena, and calendrical information that connects earthly events with celestial cycles. But perhaps most remarkable of all is what the mechanism reveals about ancient Greek scientific and technological capabilities. We tend to think of ancient civilizations as primitive in their understanding of natural phenomena, limited by lack of scientific instruments and mathematical tools. The Antikythera mechanism demonstrates that this assumption is fundamentally incorrect, at least for ancient Greece. During its intellectual golden age, the device incorporates advanced mathematical concepts that we associate with much later periods of scientific development. Its gear trains implement sophisticated astronomical theories developed by Hipparchus and other Greek astronomers. Its mechanical design demonstrates understanding of complex engineering principles that would not be seen again in European technology for over 1,000 years. Imagine the workshop where this extraordinary device was created. Picture skilled craftsmen bent over workbenches, using tools we can barely imagine to cut gear teeth with precision measured in fractions of millimeters. Visualize the master craftsman who designed the mechanism, possessing not just theoretical knowledge of astronomy and mathematics, but the practical engineering skills needed to translate abstract calculations into working mechanical reality. The cultural context that produced the Antikythera mechanism was one of extraordinary intellectual ferment. Ancient Greece during the Hellenistic period was a civilization that valued theoretical knowledge and practical application in equal measure. Greek mathematicians were developing geometric principles that would not be improved upon until the Renaissance. Greek astronomers were creating sophisticated models of planetary motion that anticipated later discoveries by Copernicus and Kepler. Greek engineers were designing mechanical devices, from siege engines to water clocks, that demonstrated advanced understanding of leverage, hydraulics, and precision manufacturing. Yet the Antikythera mechanism represents something beyond even these impressive achievements. It demonstrates the existence of a technological tradition so advanced that it seems to belong to a different civilization entirely, one with capabilities that we struggle to reconcile with our understanding of ancient limitations. The mechanism's sophistication becomes even more remarkable when we consider the broader technological context of its creation. Ancient Greece lacked electricity, had no precision measuring instruments, possessed no advanced metallurgy beyond bronze and iron working, and operated without the industrial infrastructure that we associate with complex manufacturing. Yet somehow, ancient Greek craftsmen managed to create a device that rivals modern mechanical computers in its precision and sophistication. Recent reconstructions of the mechanism, created using modern engineering techniques and materials, have confirmed its extraordinary accuracy when operated according to the ancient Greek instructions. The device can predict astronomical events with precision that matches modern calculations. Its creators clearly possessed astronomical knowledge that was not merely theoretical, but had been refined through generations of careful observation and mathematical analysis. The mystery deepens when we consider how many similar devices might have existed. The Antikythera mechanism was clearly not a one-off creation, but represents a mature technological tradition. Ancient sources make reference to similar devices created by other Greek engineers and astronomers. Cicero mentions mechanical models of the heavens created by Archimedes and Posidonius. Other classical authors describe automated mechanical devices that demonstrated advanced engineering principles. This suggests that the Antikythera mechanism was part of a broader tradition of sophisticated mechanical engineering that flourished in the ancient Greek world, but has been almost entirely lost to subsequent history. How many other devices of similar complexity existed? What other technological achievements of the ancient world have disappeared without trace, leaving us with an impoverished understanding of ancient capabilities? The implications extend far beyond simple technological history. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism suggests that ancient Greek civilization possessed scientific and engineering capabilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about the progress of human knowledge. We tend to think of scientific and technological development as a steady progression from primitive to sophisticated, but the mechanism demonstrates that ancient achievements in some areas exceeded anything that would be created for over a millennium. Consider what this means for our understanding of the fall of classical civilization. When the Roman Empire collapsed and the Dark Ages began, Europe lost not just political stability and economic prosperity, but technological knowledge of extraordinary sophistication. The techniques used to create the Antikythera mechanism vanished so completely that mechanical devices of comparable complexity would not reappear until the development of mechanical clocks in medieval Europe, and even the later devices were significantly less sophisticated than their ancient Greek predecessors. The mechanism also raises fascinating questions about the relationship between theoretical knowledge and practical application in ancient Greek society. Modern academia tends to separate pure science from applied technology, but the Antikythera mechanism demonstrates that ancient Greek thinkers saw no such distinction. The device combines the most abstract mathematical and astronomical theories with extraordinarily practical mechanical engineering, suggesting a culture that valued both intellectual understanding and technological achievement. Recent advances in imaging technology continue to reveal new aspects of the mechanism's sophistication. High-resolution X-ray tomography has uncovered previously unknown inscriptions, additional gear trains, and mechanical features that demonstrate even greater complexity than originally suspected. Each new discovery reinforces the impression that ancient Greek technological achievements were far more advanced than conventional historical understanding would suggest. The preservation of the mechanism itself represents an almost miraculous survival against overwhelming odds. Bronze objects from antiquity rarely survive intact, especially after 2 millennia of submersion in corrosive seawater. The vast majority of ancient mechanical devices have long since corroded away, melted down for their metal content, or simply worn out through use and been discarded. That this one example survived to reach modern archaeological investigation suggests that dozens, perhaps hundreds, of similar devices once existed but have been lost forever. As we contemplate this extraordinary artifact, lying now in its climate-controlled case in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, we're reminded of how much we still don't know about the capabilities and achievements of ancient civilizations. The Antikythera mechanism stands as a bronze testament to human ingenuity, a reminder that our ancestors possessed intellectual and technical capabilities that continue to surprise and humble us. The device also speaks to something profound about the human desire to understand and predict natural phenomena. Ancient Greek astronomers, lacking telescopes and modern mathematical tools, nonetheless achieved extraordinary accuracy in their observations and calculations. Their dedication to understanding celestial motions was so complete that they were willing to invest enormous amounts of time, skill, and resources in creating mechanical devices that could embody their theoretical knowledge in practical form. In our modern world, where electronic computers perform calculations of mind-boggling complexity in fractions of seconds, it's easy to underestimate the achievement represented by the Antikythera mechanism. But consider what it meant to ancient users: a device that could predict eclipses decades in advance, track the movements of planets with extraordinary accuracy, and provide a mechanical window into the grand cosmic patterns that govern celestial motion. As we allow our minds to drift back toward the present, carrying with us the image of this impossible ancient computer, we're left with a profound sense of mystery and wonder. The Antikythera mechanism reminds us that human intelligence and ingenuity are constants throughout history, that our ancestors achieved things we're only beginning to understand, and that the past continues to hold surprises that challenge our most basic assumption about the progression of human knowledge and capability. The gentle rhythm of waves against the Greek shore, where the mechanism was discovered, continues unchanged since ancient times, but our understanding of what ancient Greek civilization achieved continues to evolve with each new discovery and each new technological advance that allows us to peer more deeply into the mysteries of this extraordinary device. As we drift away from the sun-drenched waters of ancient Greece and the miraculous bronze gears of the Antikythera mechanism, our journey through time carries us back to the medieval world we began exploring earlier. But now, instead of the muddy fields and cramped hovels of peasant life, we ascend to the commanding heights where stone castles rise like mountains from the landscape, their walls promising security and comfort that seem worlds apart from the struggles we witnessed in the countryside below. Yet as we approach these imposing structures, we begin to understand that medieval castle life, despite its obvious advantages over peasant existence, carried its own unique challenges and dark realities. Behind the romantic image of noble knights and fair ladies lies a complex world of political intrigue, social hierarchy, and daily struggles that would surprise anyone whose understanding of medieval nobility comes primarily from fairy tales and romantic literature. Picture yourself approaching a typical medieval castle in the height of its power, perhaps during the 13th or 14th century, when the feudal system had reached its full development but had not yet begun its slow decline toward obsolescence. The structure rises before you with intimidating grandeur, massive stone walls 40 or 50 feet high, punctuated by towers that stretch even higher into the sky, a deep moat filled with stagnant water that gives off an unpleasant odor in warm weather surrounds the entire complex. The only approach is across a narrow bridge that can be quickly destroyed or blocked in case of attack. As you pass through the heavily fortified gatehouse, nodding the murder holes above through which boiling oil or arrows could rain down on unwelcome visitors, you enter a world that operates according to its own complex social rules and daily rhythms. The castle is not merely a residence but a complete community, home to perhaps 200 or 300 people during normal times and capable of sheltering many more during periods of siege or external threat. The heart of castle life centers around the Great Hall, an enormous room that serves simultaneously as dining room, courtroom, entertainment venue, and symbol of the Lord's power and wealth. Imagine this space during the evening meal, hundreds of people arranged in strict order of precedence, from the Lord and his immediate family at the high table on a raised platform, down through various ranks of knights, clerks, and servants to the lowliest kitchen workers, seated on simple benches near the doors. The ritual of medieval dining was elaborate theater, every detail carefully choreographed to reinforce social hierarchies and political relationships. The Lord enters the hall with ceremonial fanfare, perhaps preceded by musicians, certainly accompanied by his most important knights and advisors. Everyone in the hall rises and remains standing until he takes his seat. The quality and quantity of food served varies dramatically according to social rank, with the finest dishes reserved for the high table while those seated further away make do with coarser fare. Yet even at the high table, the dining experience would seem strange and uncomfortable to modern sensibilities. Tables are covered with cloth, but individual plates are rare. Most people eat from wooden trenchers or share large platters with their neighbors. Forks have not yet been invented, so diners use knives and fingers to manage their food. Personal hygiene, despite the elaborate rituals of hand washing that precede formal meals, remains primitive by our standards. The food itself, while abundant for the wealthy, reflects the limitations of medieval preservation techniques and seasonal availability. During winter months, even the Lord's table relies heavily on preserved meats, salted pork, smoked fish, dried beef, that can be overwhelmingly salty and often somewhat rancid by modern standards. Fresh vegetables are scarce, and the diet relies heavily on bread, cheese, and ale or wine to provide basic nutrition. But perhaps most striking to modern observers, would be the complete absence of privacy that characterized medieval castle life. The lord and his lady might enjoy a private chamber, but even this space is constantly invaded by servants, advisors, and petitioners. Lower-ranking inhabitants sleep in communal rooms, often sharing beds with complete strangers. Personal solitude, which we take for granted as a basic human need, was a luxury that medieval castle life rarely provided to anyone. The daily routine within castle walls follows rhythms dictated by both practical necessity and religious obligation. The day begins before dawn with the ringing of bells for morning prayers. Every inhabitant of the castle, from the lord to the lowest servant, is expected to attend religious services that mark the canonical hours of the church. These interruptions to daily activity occur multiple times each day, creating a rhythm of work and worship that governs every aspect of castle life. For the lord himself, castle life involves a complex balancing act between multiple, often conflicting responsibilities. He must serve as military commander, preparing for the constant possibility of warfare, and maintaining the fighting readiness of his knights and men-at-arms. He acts as supreme judge for his territories, hearing legal cases that range from disputes between peasants to accusations of serious crimes. He functions as a state manager, overseeing the agricultural production that provides the economic foundation for his power. Perhaps most demanding of all, he must navigate the treacherous waters of medieval politics. His survival depends on maintaining good relationships with his feudal superiors, while managing the ambitions and rivalries of his own vassals. A single miscalculation, supporting the wrong claimant in a succession dispute, forming an alliance that proves disadvantageous, failing to respond adequately to a military summons can result in loss of lands, imprisonment, or death. The women of medieval castle society, while often portrayed in romantic literature as delicate ornaments, actually wielded considerable practical authority within their prescribed spheres. The lord's wife manages the complex domestic economy of the castle, supervising dozens of servants, overseeing food preparation and preservation, managing the household budget, and maintaining the intricate web of social relationships that keeps the castle community functioning smoothly. When her husband is absent, whether for military campaigns, attendance at court, or management of distant properties, she often assumes complete authority over castle operations. Medieval ladies regularly directed defensive preparations, negotiated with besieging armies, managed complex legal disputes, and made military decisions that could determine the survival of their communities. Yet their lives were also constrained by expectations and limitations that would seem suffocating to modern women. Marriage was primarily a political and economic arrangement, with personal compatibility considered a pleasant bonus rather than an essential requirement. Divorce was virtually impossible, and wives who failed to produce male heirs faced social disgrace and potential abandonment. The dangers of childbirth were enormous, and many noble ladies died young from complications of pregnancy and delivery. The children growing up in medieval castles lived lives that combined extraordinary privilege with peculiar restrictions. Noble children enjoyed access to education, fine clothing, abundant food, and protection from the worst hardships that afflicted common people, yet their futures were largely predetermined by their birth order and gender. Eldest sons could look forward to inheriting their father's position and properties, but younger sons faced the prospect of making their own way in the world through military service, church careers, or fortunate marriages. Noble daughters were raised primarily to serve as political assets, their marriages carefully arranged to cement alliances or resolve conflicts between different noble families. A daughter's personal preferences regarding her future husband were rarely considered relevant to these negotiations. Many noble girls found themselves betrothed in infancy to men they would not meet until their wedding day. The physical environment of castle life, despite its apparent grandeur, involved daily discomforts that are difficult for us to imagine. Stone walls provided excellent defense against military attack, but offered little insulation against cold, damp, and drafts. Even the finest medieval castles were characterized by poor heating, primitive sanitation, and limited lighting that made indoor activities difficult once darkness fell. Winter months were particularly challenging, despite enormous fireplaces in the great hall and private chambers. Most castle spaces remained uncomfortably cold. Windows, when they existed, were small and often covered with oiled cloth or wooden shutters rather than glass. The combination of poor lighting and inadequate heating meant that castle inhabitants spent much of the winter months in conditions that we would consider barely habitable. Sanitation within castle walls was primitive and often unsanitary, while some castles had sophisticated systems of latrines built into their walls, with waste dropping into moats or rivers below. Others relied on portable chamber pots that had to be emptied by servants. The smell of human waste was a constant presence in castle life, masked but never eliminated by the liberal use of herbs and incense. The castle's role as a military fortress meant that violence was never far from daily life. The lord and his knights trained constantly for warfare, practicing with weapons in the castle courtyard, conducting mock battles, and maintaining the physical fitness necessary for combat. The sounds of clashing swords, shouting men, and galloping horses were routine background noise in castle life. When actual warfare came, castles transformed from comfortable residences into desperate refuges. Castle under siege became a prison for its inhabitants, who might endure months of confinement while enemy forces surrounded their walls. Food supplies dwindled, sanitary conditions deteriorated, and the constant stress of potential capture or death wore down even the strongest personalities. The political nature of medieval castle life meant that residents lived in constant awareness of their precarious position. Alliances shifted frequently, and yesterday's ally could become tomorrow's enemy. With little warning, noble families rose and fell with stunning rapidity, their fortunes dependent on factors often beyond their control. The outcomes of distant battles, the whims of kings, the success or failure of harvest seasons. Betrayal was an ever-present possibility. Knights sworn to loyalty might switch sides if offered better terms by an enemy. Servants might reveal castle secrets to besieging forces. Even family members could not always be trusted, as the history of medieval Europe is filled with stories of brothers fighting brothers, sons rebelling against fathers, and wives conspiring against husbands in pursuit of power or survival. The castle's economic foundation rested entirely on the agricultural labor of peasants who lived in surrounding villages. This created a relationship of mutual dependence that was also fraught with potential conflict. The lord needed peasant labor to generate the wealth that supported castle life, but the peasants resented the heavy taxes and labor obligations that their lord imposed. Peasant revolts, while infrequent, posed serious threats to noble authority and could result in the destruction of entire castle communities. Religious obligations permeated every aspect of castle life, but also created additional complications and restrictions. The church demanded significant financial contributions from noble families, reducing the resources available for other purposes. Religious law governed marriage, inheritance, and many aspects of daily behavior, sometimes conflicting with practical necessities or personal desires. The relationship between medieval nobles and the church was complex and often tense. While nobles needed church support to legitimize their authority and provide spiritual guidance for their communities, they also chafed against ecclesiastical interference in secular affairs. Conflicts between temporal and spiritual authority were common and could have serious consequences for noble families who found themselves on the wrong side of church-state disputes. Despite these challenges and complications, medieval castle life also offered opportunities for cultural development and intellectual achievement that were unavailable elsewhere in medieval society. Castles served as centers of learning, where traveling scholars, minstrels, and artists found patronage and audiences. Noble libraries, while small by modern standards, preserved classical texts and supported the slow transmission of knowledge through the medieval period. The tradition of courtly love and chivalric romance, whatever its limitations and artificial aspects, did encourage the development of literature, music, and art that enriched medieval culture. The elaborate ceremonies and seasonal celebrations of castle life provided frameworks for artistic expression and community bonding that helped maintain social cohesion despite the stresses of medieval political life. As we contemplate the complex realities of medieval castle life, its mixture of privilege and vulnerability, comfort and discomfort, power and constraint, we gain a deeper appreciation for the challenges our ancestors faced in creating stable communities and viable institutions under very difficult circumstances. The stone walls that promised security also created isolation. The social hierarchies that provided order also restricted individual freedom. The wealth that enabled cultural achievement also depended on the exploitation of those less fortunate. The legacy of medieval castle life extends far beyond the romantic images that populate our modern imagination. These communities developed administrative systems, legal traditions, and cultural practices that would evolve into the foundations of modern European civilization. The tensions between individual ambition and social obligation, between local autonomy and central authority, between secular power and religious influence that characterized castle life, continue to shape political and social development. Centuries later, as we allow our minds to drift away from these stone towers and their complex communities, we carry with us an appreciation for both the achievements and the limitations of medieval noble society. The castle inhabitants who lived within these walls faced challenges that we can barely imagine, yet they also enjoyed privileges and opportunities that were denied to the vast majority of their contemporaries. Their world reminds us that privilege always comes with price, that power creates its own vulnerabilities, and that even the most impressive human institutions are fragile constructions that require constant effort and adaptation to survive. The medieval castle, for all its apparent permanence, was ultimately as mortal as the people who built and inhabited it, leaving behind only stone ruins and historical memories of a way of life that has vanished forever. As our journey through the medieval world draws to a close, we find ourselves returning to the present with a renewed appreciation for the extraordinary complexity and richness of human experience across the centuries. We have walked through muddy peasant fields and marble church corridors, witnessed impossible ancient technologies, and explored the intimate realities of castle life. Each of these worlds, so different from our own, speaks to the remarkable adaptability, ingenuity, and resilience that have characterized human civilization throughout history. The peasants struggling to survive on meager harvests, remind us of the precious security we enjoy in our modern world. The mysterious figure of Pope Joan, whether historical fact or persistent legend, challenges our assumptions about the boundaries of possibility in human achievement. The Antikythera mechanism demonstrates that our ancestors possessed intellectual and technical capabilities that continue to surprise and humble us, and the complex realities of castle life reveal that even privilege and power came with their own unique challenges and constraints. Perhaps most importantly, these glimpses into the past remind us that human nature itself remains remarkably consistent across time and circumstance. Medieval people experienced love and loss, ambition and disappointment, hope and fear in ways that we can still recognize and understand. Their daily struggles were different from ours, but their fundamental humanity, their capacity for both remarkable achievement and profound suffering, connects us across the centuries. As you settle into the comfort of your modern surroundings, surrounded by conveniences and securities that medieval people could never have imagined, let these historical perspectives drift peacefully through your mind. The central heating that keeps you warm, the abundant food that nourishes you, the political and social freedoms you enjoy, the medical care that protects your health, all of these represent the accumulated achievements of countless generations who struggled, dreamed, and persevered through circumstances far more challenging than our own. The church bells that once regulated every hour of medieval life have faded into historical memory, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing as sleep approaches. The harsh realities of medieval survival have given way to the soft comfort of your bed, the security of your home, and the peaceful certainty that tomorrow will bring new opportunities rather than desperate struggles for basic survival. Let the weight of historical perspective settle gently over you like a warm blanket, reminding you of humanity's long journey from those difficult medieval centuries to our present moment of unprecedented comfort and possibility. As your eyes grow heavy and your breathing deepens, carry with you the knowledge that you are part of this great continuity of human experience, benefiting from the struggles and achievements of all those who came before. The medieval world we have explored tonight has returned to the realm of dreams and memories, but its lessons remain that human beings are capable of extraordinary achievement under the most challenging circumstances, that every era has its own unique struggles and triumphs, and that the passage of time brings both loss and gain, both sorrow and hope. Rest now in the comfort of the present, knowing that you are connected to all of human history through the simple fact of your shared humanity, and that tomorrow's possibilities rest upon the foundation of countless yesterdays. Let the gentle rhythms of history carry you peacefully into sleep, where medieval peasants and ancient Greek engineers, mysterious popes and medieval nobles all fade into the timeless realm of dreams. Good night and sleep well, wrapped in the warm knowledge of how far we have all come together on this remarkable human journey through time.